The unlikely signal. The galaxy was vast and empty, a place where the unknown stretched farther than anyone could see. Humanity had long been forgotten in the cold silence of space. Alien empires ruled with iron fists, and humans were considered nothing more than insignificant ants on a small, forgotten planet. The humans knew this, but they didn't care. They had their own way of life, and for now, that was enough. But little did they know, things were about to change forever. In a small, humble research station, deep on the outskirts of Earth's orbit, Dr. Evelyn Hawke worked tirelessly. She had no desire for fame, no craving for glory, only a passion for understanding the stars. For years, she had listened to the static hum of the universe, trying to make sense of the signals that occasionally flickered through her equipment. Most of them were just random noise, a product of the chaos of space. But this time, something was different. It started as a whisper, soft, almost inaudible, but it was unmistakable. Dr. Hawke's fingers hovered over the controls, adjusting the frequency to isolate the strange signal. The words began to take shape, though they seemed garbled at first, as if the message was coming from an ancient and distant source. She adjusted the settings one more time, and then the words became clear, as if someone, or something, was speaking directly to her. Humanity is not forgotten. We have watched. The time has come. Reply now, or forever remain silent. Dr. Hawke's breath caught in her throat. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. This was no ordinary transmission. It was a message meant specifically for humans. The words sent chills down her spine, and she quickly recorded the transmission, sending it to Earth's highest authorities. But there was a problem. The moment she sent the message, something strange happened. A strange interference filled the room, like a wave of static washing over her screens. It was as if the universe itself was trying to block the signal. A deep unease crept into Dr. Hawke's mind. Whoever, or whatever, had sent the message didn't want it to be heard. She quickly cut the transmission, but the damage had been done. The signal had been received, and now someone would come for them. Back on Earth, the political leaders were slow to act. After all, they had little interest in what was happening in the far reaches of space. They were used to being ignored by the galactic powers, their planet a forgotten speck in the grand scheme of things. The message was dismissed as a hoax, a random transmission with no meaning. But Dr. Hawke wasn't about to let it go. She knew this wasn't just some accident. This was the beginning of something larger, something humanity wasn't prepared for. Ignoring the orders to stay silent, Dr. Hawke made the decision to reply. She composed a message, simple yet direct, sending it back to the source of the transmission. We hear you. We are here. What do you want from us? She hesitated for a moment before hitting send. A part of her feared the consequences, but the curiosity was overwhelming. What if this was the chance humanity had been waiting for? What if they weren't meant to be forgotten forever? What if, for once, they could stand up and be counted? Hours passed with no response. The silence was unbearable. Dr. Hawke sat in front of her console, waiting for something, anything, that would break the stillness. She had made the bold decision to reply, but now it felt as if she had thrown a stone into an endless ocean, waiting for a sign that it had reached its destination. Just as she was about to give up, the screen flickered. A new message appeared. This one was even clearer, and it sent a wave of shock through her body. The message was short, to the point, and left no room for doubt. Prepare. The galaxy will note you. You will not wait any longer. Dr. Hawke stared at the words, her heart racing. There was no mistake this time. The message was real. Someone, or something, was preparing to make their presence known. Humanity had always waited, always looked up at the stars, hoping for a chance to prove itself. But this was different. This wasn't a call for help. This was a declaration. The galaxy was about to hear from Earth, and it would no longer be the silent, forgotten corner of space. Humans had been overlooked for far too long, but now they would make their mark. But as Dr. Hawk prepared to share this discovery with the world, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching her. The universe, vast and silent, had just become much more dangerous. The message she had received was only the beginning. Soon, humanity would have to face the consequences of their actions. They had answered the call, and now they would find out just what that truly meant. The galaxy had no idea what was coming, and neither did Dr. Hawk. But one thing was certain. Humanity's fate was about to change forever. Dr. Hawk's fingers trembled slightly as she read the chilling message for the third time. Prepare. The galaxy will note you. You will not wait any longer. The words echoed in her mind, each one heavier than the last. What did it mean? Who had sent this message, and why had they reached out to Earth now? The universe had long since moved on from humanity's tiny corner of space, but now it seemed everything was shifting. She glanced nervously at the quiet control room. The faint hum of machinery was the only sound, a stark contrast to the storm of thoughts racing through her mind. Her message had been simple enough. Do we hear you? We are here. What do you want from us? And yet it had stirred something far more dangerous than curiosity. It had provoked a response, and now she feared the full extent of what might come next. Dr. Hawk took a deep breath, then slowly activated the transmission again, this time to Earth's highest council of officials. Her voice was steady, but there was a tinge of urgency in it. This is Dr. Evelyn Hawk, she said into the mic. I've made contact. The message we received was not an anomaly. It's real. We need to prepare ourselves for what's coming. Her words, though they carried the weight of truth, were met with disbelief. The leaders of the Earth Council responded with cold, calculated skepticism, their voices tinged with condescension. Dr. Hawk, one of the council members, said, "You're talking about an unknown transmission, possibly just a random signal. We've been through this before. Humanity is insignificant in the grand scheme of things. Focus on your research and stop wasting our time." But Dr. Hawk knew better. She had seen the undeniable proof of the transmission. She had heard the urgency in the words. There was no mistake. She refused to back down. "I can assure you, this is not a hoax," she said firmly. "This is real. We have to take action, or we'll be caught unprepared." But the council dismissed her, continuing to prioritize their political agendas over the looming threat. The message was too cryptic, the consequences too far-fetched for them to take seriously. Humanity, in their eyes, was still too small to matter. They didn't realize the true danger that had just begun. Hours later, as Dr. Hawk sat in front of her monitors, the silence felt heavier. The messages had stopped. No more responses had come through. Had she been wrong? Was it all just a strange glitch in the system? No, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was happening, something bigger than herself. The next day, the reports started to filter in. It was subtle at first, nothing more than rumors and whispers. Unexplained malfunctions in communication satellites, energy surges in remote parts of the world, even strange weather patterns that couldn't be attributed to any natural cause. Something was happening, and it seemed to be connected to the signal she had sent. The world's governments were still reluctant to believe her. But the public, the people who had long been ignored in the vastness of the galaxy, they weren't so dismissive. The first stirrings of a growing panic began to spread, and Dr. Hawk found herself being sought after by journalists, media outlets, and conspiracy theorists. As she sat in her lab late one evening, staring at the blank screens, Dr. Hawk had no answers. The galaxy had been silent for so long, yet now it felt like it was on the brink of coming alive with a new, terrifying energy. That night, as she rested uneasily in her small apartment, something happened. A low hum filled the air, vibrating through the walls. It wasn't the typical hum of machinery. This sound was different, darker, and it came from everywhere, surrounding the planet itself. At first, Dr. Hawk thought it was her imagination, but then the lights in her apartment flickered. The hum intensified, vibrating through her bones. Her heart raced as she rushed to the window, pulling open the blinds. Outside, the sky was changing. The stars themselves seemed to be moving, shifting in patterns that made no sense. Dr. Hawk watched in awe, her breath caught in her throat. The once quiet heavens now seemed to be swirling with unnatural energy. Something immense, was approaching. In the distance, beyond the planet's atmosphere, she could see strange objects breaking through the outer layers of space, forming a massive formation in the sky. They were unlike anything humanity had ever seen. The shapes were too large, too precise, too organized. A fleet, a sign of an invasion. The possibility was enough to paralyze her with fear. But as the lights of the distant fleet shimmered, Dr. Hawk felt something else stir within her, a spark of defiance. The message had been clear: you will not wait any longer. It wasn't just a warning. It was a challenge. Humanity had been overlooked for far too long. And now, whether they were ready or not, they were being thrust into the heart of something much bigger than they had ever imagined. The time for waiting had passed. The galaxy might think humanity was weak, insignificant, and unable to defend itself. But as the ships loomed closer, Dr. Hawk knew one thing for sure. This was humanity's moment. The time had come to rise up, to show the galaxy exactly what humans were capable of. She wasn't alone in her thoughts. Around the world, others were waking up to the same terrifying realization. The galaxy had underestimated humanity for too long, and now it was time to prove them wrong. The fate of Earth and all of humanity rested in their hands. And as Dr. Hawk stood at the window, staring into the strange night sky, she could feel it. Humanity wasn't just going to survive. They were going to make the galaxy tremble. The days following the appearance of the mysterious fleet were a blur of chaos and confusion. The world had never felt so uncertain. Dr. Hawk continued her work tirelessly in the lab, trying to make sense of the strange energy patterns that the incoming ships were emitting. Her mind raced as she calculated the possible ramifications of such an unprecedented event. This was not a simple alien encounter. It was something far more dangerous, something that could change everything. The government still refused to take the threat seriously. Most world leaders were too caught up in their own agendas to recognize the gravity of the situation. The council that had ignored Dr. Hawk's warnings was now dismissing her findings as pure speculation. It was infuriating, but Dr. Hawk didn't have time to argue. The silence of the higher-ups only made the urgency of her task more pressing. She needed to find answers, and fast. Late one evening, Dr. Hawk was deep in her research when something unexpected happened. The monitors on her desk flickered, their lights dimming and brightening in sync with the vibrations that seemed to pulse through the ground. Then a low rumble came from the sky, distant but growing louder by the second. The fleet that had been silently hovering in space for days now seemed to be moving. It was real. The threat was no longer just a distant possibility. Across the world, people were beginning to take notice. The public had been following the news with growing dread, the steady presence of the alien ships above them serving as a constant reminder of humanity's vulnerability. The whispers turned into panic as reports of strange phenomena appeared all over the planet. Electrical systems began to malfunction, and satellites orbiting the Earth flickered like dying stars. Governments scrambled to form alliances, but it was too late for diplomacy. Humanity had been caught in the most dangerous game in the galaxy. As Dr. Hawk tried to make sense of the strange signals still coming from the fleet, she began to realize something far more terrifying. These ships weren't simply hovering in space. They were scanning. They were learning. And they weren't just monitoring humanity. They were gathering data on every aspect of Earth. It was as though they had been watching for a long time, waiting for the right moment to strike. And then the communication came. It wasn't like the previous messages. Those had been cryptic and filled with unsettling hints. This one was direct, and it echoed through the airwaves across the globe. It was a message for all of humanity, not just for Dr. Hawk. You have been silent for too long. The galaxy watches you, but you are weak. Now, You will kneel. You will learn your place. The words were cold, harsh, and final. The message was clear. Humanity had been deemed insignificant, and now they were about to pay the price for their defiance. Dr. Hawk clenched her fists, feeling the weight of the message settle in her chest. There was no way to avoid it now. Humanity had been pushed to the brink, and the time for survival was rapidly running out. But in the face of this overwhelming threat, something unexpected happened. A spark of rebellion ignited across the planet. People who had once cowered under the assumption that they were too small to matter in the vastness of the galaxy now stood tall. News reports from every corner of Earth began to show signs of something strange. An energy, a force that had been dormant within humanity for centuries, began to stir. The people had had enough. They were no longer going to hide or beg for mercy. Humanity had always been a species of creators, innovators, and fighters. They had faced their fair share of challenges throughout history, but nothing on this scale. Now, with the galaxy looking down on them, they weren't going to cower in fear. They were going to fight back. Dr. Hawk's phone buzzed with an urgent message. It was from the Global Defense Council. Despite their earlier refusal to believe the threat, they now wanted her expertise. They needed answers. Fast. Dr. Hawk could feel the change in the air. The urgency had shifted from disbelief to action. As she prepared for the council meeting, she knew this was only the beginning. The alien fleet was coming, and humanity had no choice but to face them head-on. The leaders of the Defense Council, including military commanders and political figures, gathered in the war room. They were grim, their faces lined with worry and uncertainty, but they were no longer dismissing the threat. They were ready to make decisions. Dr. Hawk, you've been studying this alien fleet, General Ramirez said, his voice hoarse. What are they planning? What can we do? Dr. Hawk glanced around at the tense faces before her. She could see the fear in their eyes, but also something else. Resolve. Humanity wasn't ready to give up without a fight. We don't know what they want yet, Dr. Hawk said slowly. But we can't just wait for them to strike. We have to take the initiative. We need to figure out what their weaknesses are, if they have any. And we need to do it fast. A wave of murmurs rippled through the room. It was clear that no one had a concrete plan, but they all understood the same truth. Humanity was at a crossroads. They either rose to the challenge, or they were wiped out. Dr. Hawk knew the galaxy didn't see humanity as a threat, but that was about to change. Humanity wasn't going to wait for permission to act. They were going to fight for their survival, and they were going to make the galaxy tremble. It was time to show the universe what humanity was truly capable of. The days following the message from the alien fleet felt like an eternity. Across the globe, chaos and uncertainty reigned. Governments scrambled to form a unified defense, but the feeling of helplessness was palpable. The ships in the sky loomed larger every day, casting long shadows over cities below. Their technology was far beyond anything humanity had ever seen. It seemed as though the odds were stacked against them. But beneath the fear and the overwhelming sense of dread, something powerful was stirring. Humanity had always been a species of resilience, of fighting back when all seemed lost. And now, as the world braced itself for an unimaginable war, they were preparing to prove that they had more to offer than the alien invaders could ever understand. Dr. Hawk worked tirelessly in her lab, poring over every bit of data she could find. The alien fleet's technology was advanced, almost beyond comprehension, but there were patterns, small, almost invisible weaknesses. It was the first glimmer of hope humanity had had since the invasion began. She knew that understanding their enemy's technology was the key to fighting back, and as her eyes scanned the glowing holographic displays in front of her, she realized that the humans weren't as powerless as they had once thought. Back in the war room, leaders from all corners of the Earth convened. A global military alliance was formed, composed of the world's best fighters, strategists, and engineers. Their task was clear. They would need to strike first, hitting the alien fleet before it had a chance to launch its full assault. The military was assembling an unprecedented number of forces, combining air, sea, and ground units with cutting-edge technology. Humanity's combined strength was now focused on a single, clear goal: to survive and fight back. The first real strike came from a coalition of nations working in unison. Under the guidance of Dr. Hawk's research, human forces had adapted their technology to exploit the alien fleet's weak points. They had developed new weapons, repurposed satellites, and used unconventional tactics that would surprise their alien adversaries. The world's leaders, who had once feared that they were helpless, now saw a different path forward. The first battle took place in the skies. A fleet of fighter jets, armed with new electromagnetic pulse (EMP) weapons, took off from bases around the world. These jets were humanity's first line of defense against the alien ships that hung above them like giant, menacing specters. The pilots were nervous but resolute. This was no longer just a fight for victory. It was a fight for survival. General Ramirez, one of the key figures in the military command, stood in the control center, watching the footage as it streamed in from the front lines. The jets moved in perfect formation, their engines roaring as they approached the alien fleet. The alien ships remained silent, watching, waiting, as the jets closed in. It was a moment of terrifying stillness, the calm before the storm. Then, without warning, the first EMP blast was fired. The pulse of energy sent a wave through the atmosphere, and the first alien ship, the one closest to the strike zone, shuddered violently. The crew inside could feel the sudden jolt, the mysterious force that disrupted their systems. For the first time since the alien invasion had begun, it felt as if the balance of power had shifted. But the aliens weren't done yet. As the humans prepared to strike again, the remaining ships fired back with a devastating force. Energy weapons, powerful enough to obliterate entire cities, erupted from the alien fleet, crashing into the ground below. The world watched in horror as explosions rocked cities, leaving destruction in their wake. The aliens were not as easily defeated as humanity had hoped, but humanity refused to back down. In the chaos of the first clash, Dr. Hawk's team discovered something shocking. The alien fleet, while incredibly advanced, was vulnerable to certain frequencies of radio waves. It was a breakthrough that could change the course of the war. By adjusting their technology to emit specific signals, humanity could destabilize the alien ships' communications, causing their weapons to malfunction. The military worked around the clock, using every resource at their disposal to fine-tune this new weapon. It was their chance to turn the tide. The message was clear now. Humanity wasn't just going to survive. They were going to make the aliens pay for their arrogance. Weeks passed, and as the battle raged on, humanity's forces grew bolder. More weapons were developed, more plans executed, and more unexpected victories piled up. The alien fleet, which had once seemed invincible, now showed signs of distress. Their ships, despite their superior firepower, couldn't adapt to humanity's relentless ingenuity. The aliens were starting to realize that they had underestimated the human spirit. Then came the final showdown. It was time for humanity's last decisive blow. General Ramirez, along with Dr. Hawk, had developed a daring plan. An all-out assault on the alien flagship, the largest and most heavily armored ship in the fleet. If they could destroy it, they would cripple the entire invasion force. The world's best pilots, soldiers, and engineers prepared for the mission of their lives. It was the moment humanity had been waiting for, and failure was not an option. The attack was coordinated perfectly. As the jets, bombers, and ground forces moved in, the EMP frequencies were activated, disabling the alien fleet's weapon systems. For the first time, the human forces were able to strike without fear of retaliation. It was a gamble, a last-ditch effort to save Earth, but it worked. The alien flagship began to crumble under the onslaught, its shield systems failing, its weapons silenced. The galaxy that had once seen humanity as weak and insignificant was now witnessing their defiance. Humanity had refused to ask for permission, and in doing so, had proven that they could rise up, even when the odds were insurmountable. As the flagship exploded in a brilliant burst of light, the world watched in awe. The war was far from over, but humanity had sent a powerful message. They were not to be underestimated. The aliens had thought they could wipe them out, but now it was clear that humanity would stop at nothing to protect their future. Humanity had finally made their own fate, and the galaxy trembled. The alien fleet was reeling from the massive blow they had just suffered. The destruction of their flagship was more than just a symbolic victory. It was a crushing blow to their morale. Across the galaxy, their commanders were scrambling to reassess their strategy, trying to regroup and plan their next move. They had never anticipated humanity's resolve, and now they were beginning to understand that underestimating Earth had been their greatest mistake. On Earth, the victory was celebrated with cautious optimism. People were still reeling from the devastation the invaders had caused, and the wounds of the battle were fresh. Entire cities had been leveled in the early stages of the war, and countless lives had been lost. But for the first time in months, humanity had a glimmer of hope. The tides had shifted, and the alien invaders were no longer the uncontested force they once seemed to be. Dr. Hawk and General Ramirez stood together in the war room, overlooking the maps of the galaxy. The destruction of the flagship had left the alien fleet fractured, but it had also left them desperate. The aliens were known for their adaptability, and now that they had tasted defeat, they were likely to come back with even more formidable force. The question now was not whether the aliens would retaliate, but how they would do so. "We can't afford to be complacent," Dr. Hawk said, her voice filled with determination. "We need to keep pressing forward, strike while they're vulnerable." General Ramirez nodded, his brow furrowed. "I agree, but we need to be careful. The aliens will adapt, and they'll be coming back stronger than ever. We can't afford another misstep." The world's leaders were now united by a single cause: to drive the alien invaders from Earth once and for all. Countries that had once been divided were now working together in an unprecedented global alliance. The shared goal of survival had forged a bond stronger than any political or military alliance the world had seen before. Together, they began to rebuild, repurpose, and develop new strategies that would allow them to stand against the alien threat. The global military began gathering forces in a massive campaign. They had a new weapon now, a system designed to neutralize the aliens' advanced weaponry by targeting their communication networks. This technology had been born from humanity's ingenuity and desperation, and it was humanity's trump card. They called it the Blackout, a network of satellites that could broadcast disabling frequencies to disrupt the alien fleet's systems, effectively rendering their weapons useless. It was risky, but if it worked, it could turn the tide of the entire war. Meanwhile, humanity's scientists worked tirelessly on new weapons and technologies. The reverse-engineered alien tech, once thought to be beyond understanding, was slowly starting to yield results. The humans had learned to fight on their own terms, using the aliens' own technology against them. The reverse engineering of the alien power cores allowed humanity to build weapons that were now beginning to rival the very ships that had once threatened Earth. As these efforts unfolded, the human forces also began organizing a daring counteroffensive. They had made the decision to go on the attack. The goal was not just to protect Earth, but to force the aliens to leave the planet for good. The plan was simple but audacious: strike at the heart of the alien fleet once more, this time with everything humanity had. The attack was set for the following week. Every resource, every ally, and every soldier was now committed to the mission. The world held its breath as humanity's fleets gathered in space, ready for the final push. They would strike the alien fleet in their most vulnerable moment, before the invaders could regroup and launch their full-scale retaliation. The human forces had never been more united. On every continent, from the streets of New York to the jungles of South America, people stood together, ready to fight. Soldiers prepared, engineers fine-tuned weapons, and civilians offered support in any way they could. The war had taken everything from them: lives, cities, families, but it had also forged something stronger, a sense of unity and a resolve to never let their world fall. It was in these moments of collective determination that humanity's true power revealed itself. It wasn't just their weapons or their technology that made them strong. It was their unity, their unwavering belief in their ability to shape their own fate. The invaders had thought they could break humanity, but instead they had awakened a force that would stop at nothing to protect what was theirs. As the fleets prepared to launch their final assault, the world watched in silence. The outcome of this battle would determine the fate of Earth, and perhaps the entire galaxy. But for the first time in this long war, humanity had the upper hand. The aliens might be stronger, they might have more advanced technology, but they had never faced an enemy quite like this. The rising storm was coming. The battle for Earth would be unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed, and humanity was about to show the universe that they had only just begun. As the countdown began, there was no turning back. Humanity had refused to wait for permission. Now they were taking their fate into their own hands, and they would not stop until their enemies were vanquished. The galaxy would tremble as humanity finally rose from the ashes of their struggle. The night before the final assault, a deep sense of anticipation blanketed Earth. The preparations were complete. Humanity's forces, armed with their best technology, and the fierce will to protect their home, were ready. Every ship in the human fleet had been outfitted with the best technology available. Advanced weaponry, newly designed defense systems, and the blackout satellites, which had now been integrated into their ships for maximum disruption. In the command center, Dr. Hawk and General Ramirez stood over a holographic map of the alien fleet. The strategy was set. The first wave would target the outermost defensive positions of the alien fleet, neutralizing their heavy artillery. The second wave would strike at their communication hubs, targeting the aliens' weak points. The final wave, led by General Ramirez himself, would go straight to the heart of the alien fleet, the command ship. "The time has come," General Ramirez said, his voice steady but filled with the weight of the mission. "We've fought long and hard, but we know this will be the toughest battle we've ever faced. We cannot afford any mistakes." Dr. Hawk nodded. Her face hardened with determination. "We have the element of surprise on our side. The aliens don't know what's coming. They think they're going to regroup, but we've already neutralized their command. We're ready." Across the globe, the atmosphere was thick with the tension of an impending battle. From the bustling streets of New York to the quiet hills of rural Japan, people watched as the skies darkened with the shadows of humanity's final hope. Families huddled together, knowing that this battle was about more than just survival. It was about showing the invaders that humanity could not be erased. The strength of Earth's people now rested on the shoulders of the brave souls who would fight in the coming battle. As the fleets took off from Earth's surface and into the dark expanse of space, the hearts of every human on the planet beat in unison. Their eyes turned to the skies, waiting for the first explosion to signal that the battle had begun. The assault began without warning. The first wave of human ships, using newly adapted stealth technologies, broke through the alien outer defenses. The element of surprise was their greatest weapon. The alien ships, unaware of the human fleet's approach, barely had time to react as the human fleet fired their newly designed plasma weapons. Explosions lit up the dark void of space as alien ships were torn apart by the sheer power of humanity's new technology. The alien fleet had not expected this kind of attack. As the first wave continued their offensive, the second wave advanced, targeting the alien fleet's communication hubs. The blackout satellites, now fully operational, sent pulses of energy through the void, disabling the alien fleet's ability to coordinate. Alien commanders were left scrambling, their once organized forces now thrown into chaos. The communication systems that had allowed the invaders to coordinate their overwhelming forces had now become their greatest weakness. In an instant, the balance of power had shifted. General Ramirez's fleet, the final wave, pushed forward toward the heart of the enemy fleet. The command ship, A massive behemoth of technology and might lay ahead. Its defenses strong but not invincible. The alien fleet, once invulnerable, was now in disarray, and the human forces were closing in for the final strike. "Move in. We're going straight for the heart," Ramirez ordered, his voice booming over the communication system. His ship surged forward with the precision of a well-coordinated assault. The alien defenses, though still strong, faltered against the relentless onslaught. Human ships fired relentlessly, their weapons striking the alien ships with deadly accuracy. The soundless explosions rippled across space as the alien vessels were torn apart one by one. The command ship came into view, its immense size casting a shadow over the battlefield. It was heavily guarded by elite alien fighters and numerous defense turrets, but the human fleet showed no signs of slowing down. They had come too far, and they were determined to win at all costs. On board the flagship, Ramirez stared at the massive alien ship on the view screen. The target was within reach. This was the moment they had been waiting for. "Lock onto their weak points," Ramirez commanded. The targeting systems locked in on the alien ship's core, its most vulnerable area. With a few precise orders, the human ships launched their final assault. Beams of light and waves of powerful energy slammed into the alien command ship, causing massive explosions. The structure began to tremble, as if it were trying to hold onto its last shred of power. But the aliens were no longer in control. The human fleet had broken their hold on the galaxy. The invaders were crumbling before their eyes. As the command ship began to break apart, the remaining alien ships scattered, retreating in chaos. The alien forces, once a symbol of invincibility, were now fleeing, leaving Earth behind in defeat. Humanity had shown them what true strength was. Dr. Hawk, watching from the command center back on Earth, allowed herself a rare smile. The impossible had been achieved. They had done it. They had struck at the heart of the enemy and turned the tide of the war. The battle was over. The galaxy would never forget this day. The day humanity refused to be conquered. The day they proved that they would never, ever wait for permission to protect their world. Now, Earth stood victorious. The invaders had underestimated humanity, but now they knew the truth. No one could defeat the human spirit. The aftermath of the battle was a strange mixture of overwhelming relief and disbelief. Earth had faced its darkest moment, and yet humanity had emerged victorious. The sky, once filled with the terrifying shadows of alien ships, now stood calm and serene. The silence that followed the war felt almost unnatural, as if the very universe was holding its breath. Dr. Hawk stood at the command center, her eyes fixed on the view screen in front of her. The once dominant alien fleet was now a scattering of debris, floating lifeless in space. The invaders who had once boasted of their advanced technology, their unassailable might, were now nothing more than broken remnants of their former selves. The soundless explosions that had lit up the sky just hours earlier now seemed like a distant memory. General Ramirez, too, stood in silence, his expression unreadable. He had led humanity to this victory, but the cost had been high. There had been losses, sacrifices made by brave men and women who had given their lives for this moment. As he looked at the empty expanse of space, the weight of those sacrifices pressed down on him. But despite the toll, there was also a profound sense of pride. Humanity had not only survived, it had triumphed. And with that triumph came a new era, an era where Earth no longer cowered in the shadows of the galaxy. Humanity had proven that it could stand shoulder to shoulder with the greatest forces in the universe. They had taken their fate into their own hands and fought for their survival. And now, they were free. Back on Earth, celebrations erupted across every city, every nation. From the streets of New York to the quiet villages of rural Africa, humanity rejoiced. People embraced each other, laughed, cried, and remembered those who had fallen. The war had been long and hard, but it had united Earth like never before. All differences, all boundaries, had been erased in the face of a common enemy. In the midst of the celebration, Dr. Hawk's team worked tirelessly to understand the full scope of their victory. The alien technology they had acquired during the war was now in human hands. With it came the opportunity to advance at an exponential rate, to understand and harness the alien technology that had once threatened to destroy them. The research labs were alive with the hum of machines and the hurried steps of scientists eager to unlock the secrets of the technology they had captured. But Dr. Hawk knew that victory alone would not be enough. Humanity had to remain vigilant. The aliens might have been defeated, but their allies, other species across the galaxy, would not take kindly to this loss. The balance of power had shifted, and it was only a matter of time before others would come to challenge humanity's newfound strength. The government leaders around the world convened, discussing the next steps. Earth had emerged victorious, but now the real work began. Humanity had to rebuild, not just its cities and nations, but its position in the galaxy. The war had shown them that they could no longer be passive observers in the grand scheme of the universe. The time had come for them to take their place among the stars, not as subjugated beings, but as equals, if not superiors. "We've shown the galaxy what we're capable of," General Ramirez said at a global summit, addressing the leaders of every nation. "But now we must stand firm. We must be ready for whatever challenges lie ahead." Our victory was not just about fighting for survival. It was about making the statement, "We are not to be underestimated. We are humanity, and we will decide our future, not anyone else." The leaders around the table nodded in agreement. A new era had begun, one where humanity was no longer the underdog. They had tasted victory, and they knew now that they could face whatever challenges came next. The galaxy was vast, and there would always be threats, but humanity had shown it had the strength to rise above them. The space agencies, now backed by the full resources of Earth's governments, began preparations for the next phase. Human ships, now equipped with the alien technology, began to explore deeper into space. Their missions were no longer just about survival. They were about discovery, about ensuring that humanity would never again be caught off guard. They would explore new worlds, form new alliances, and, if necessary, defend their newfound place in the galaxy. Dr. Hawk sat in her office late that night, reflecting on everything that had happened. She had been there from the beginning, from the first signs of the alien invasion, to the bitter days of struggle, and now, to this moment of triumph. She had seen humanity at its lowest, and now she was witnessing its rise. But there was still much to do. The victory was not the end. It was only the beginning. The galaxy had seen what humanity could do when pushed to the brink, but Dr. Hawk knew the universe was vast and filled with unknowns. There were still many dangers lurking, still many challenges ahead. But for the first time in human history, they were not facing the future with fear. They were facing it with hope. Hope that they would continue to thrive. Hope that they would continue to grow. The final transmission from the human fleet was broadcast across the world, and it was clear that humanity's resolve had never been stronger. The message was simple, but powerful. We are humanity. We will never wait for permission. Our fate is ours to decide, and we will fight to protect it. As the message echoed across the planet, a new dawn rose over Earth. The alien invaders had come, they had fought, and they had fallen. And now, humanity stood tall, proud, and unyielding. The galaxy had learned that when humanity refused to ask for permission, it could make its own fate. And as the stars twinkled in the distance, humanity knew that the greatest chapters of their story were yet to be written. The universe had witnessed their rise, and it would never forget the day when humans refused to ask for permission.